I was away last Sunday morning on holidays, and Jeffrey Chiam was speaking here, and Jeffrey finished his presentation by asking you, to write down encouragement notes or even warning notes about your relationship with God and keeping going in your relationship with God. And he said in his brief to be as detailed as you like or as general as you like, and maybe even to warn of a threat that you've observed or list a blessing to encourage each other. And as I was reading through these, thinking about this, we'll put a couple of them up on the screen. This one came in, you probably can't read it from where you are, but dear Village Church, during this Christmas period, stay firm in the faith. I encourage you to invite others to join at Carol's night and perhaps at church on Christmas Day, to invite others to join you. Or another one that came in, actually there were some that came in by pen and then some that were submitted on computer, but sing loudly to proclaim him towards all the others. Or we start our day by asking God, what should I do today? And end our day pondering what God has done. Or Village Church, keep your eyes on the truth of Jesus. And a whole range of different encouragement notes and warning notes. And really, all of them were encouragement to remain or warning against not remaining. And I want to just pick up on that idea of remain. And you'll see that's where we're going if you have the outline out to follow the flow of where we're going this morning. The instruction from John at the start of 1 John chapter 2, verse 28, and it's an instruction to Christians, and the instruction, Christian, is to remain. So then, little children, remain in him. And I think really, at one level, it's complex to do, but it's a very simple point. To remain is not a passive thing. To remain is an active thing. If I want to remain married to Kathy, I can't keep the whole situation, take it for granted. If I want to remain married to Kathy, then I need to choose to actively think about remaining married to Kathy. I can't just let our marriage drift along. If I don't give conscious thought to how I might serve and love and care for her and actively pursue growing in relationship with Catherine, then we will gradually spiral apart. And I would just say to you this morning, I've been married to Kathy for 31 years, and actually we're in a really good phase. First day back from holidays, we're in a great place. But there have been times in the 31 years when I haven't given it enough attention, and we've gradually felt ourselves spiralling down. And really, there's been a wake up, Dominic. Pay attention, Dominic. Thought is needed here. To remain in relationship takes conscious effort. And the instruction is not remain in marriage, but the instruction today is remain in him. To remain in Jesus. So John this morning is writing to Christians. You say, what if I'm not a Christian and I'm here at Village Church today? Firstly, you're so welcome. Today is not a talk on how to become a Christian. We do those kind of talks at the gingerbread night on Wednesday night. I'll give a short talk on how to become a Christian at the beginning. On Wednesday night, Thursday night, Friday night. We do those talks. Even at the carols tonight, there'll be a little how to become a Christian moment. But today is a talk, this morning is a talk, this passage is a passage about how to remain in relationship with God. What constructive initiative would you need to take to remain in relationship with God? And actually, all those ideas that Jeffrey got us to think about at the end of last week's presentation were all about intentional decisions to remain. And I've just noted over the years that there have been people who've sat with us in church and have in the end chosen not to remain. But it wasn't that they just were all systems go until one day they just woke up one morning and said, I'm going to walk away from Jesus today. My observation pastoral observation has been that it's been much more subtle than that, much more gradual, almost imperceptible. It's been a little by little thing. And actually, it's like that when I've seen marriages dissolve. It's generally not everything's going great and a 180-degree turnaround the next day. There's really often, this is a generalisation, but a gradual, almost imperceptible lessening of priority, a taking of each other for granted, a shift from focused serving to taking for granted. Now, why remain? Well, the goal, the reason to remain in him is verse 28, so now, little children, remain in him so that when he appears, when Jesus comes back, Jesus is coming back at the second coming of Christ. When he appears, when he comes back on the clouds in glory, we may have confidence and not be ashamed before him at his coming. Here's the thing, Jesus is going to return. I'm looking forward to Jesus returning. I'm not sure when he's going to return, but you know what? I want to feel confident. I don't want to be nervous about the idea that Jesus is coming back. That's going to be awesome when Jesus comes back. I'm feeling confident about how we're going to be with each other when he comes back, and I certainly don't want to be ashamed when Jesus comes back. And how do I get to that point? How can I be sure that I'll be confident when Jesus comes back and I won't be ashamed? Well, intentionally strive to remain. And point 2, here's the passage we're looking at today, these first 10 verses of chapter 3, and there are 3 points. And they're all different aspects of how to make decisions to remain in him. And the first one I want to say from point 2a is revel in the privilege of the Father's love. Just, if I'm going to remain, first thing I just want to think about is what a great privilege it is to be loved by God the way I am loved by the Father. Just enjoy that privilege, wonder in that privilege, glory in that privilege. See verse 3, chapter 3, verse 1. Verse 1, see what great love. Wonder at what great love the Father has given us. Isn't it amazing, this great love that the Father has given us, that we should be called God's children, and we are God's children. The Father's given us a love, but not just a love that allows me to be labelled a child of God, but in reality to be a child of God. Members of Village Church, brothers and sisters in Christ, we are children of God. This is a phenomenal privilege. This is amazing. To know God as your Father is the greatest possible privilege that a human being could have. God is the creator and sustainer of the universe. He doesn't need us, but he makes us his children. Now, Taylor Swift is giving her last concert this weekend of this long tour that she's been on all around the world. There's a moment in the Taylor Swift concert. Let's just check our Taylor Swift knowledge in this church. What song is the hat presented in? Okay. Any others?
Oh. I'm not sure if I'm even going to get this right.
Alan.
Is it 22?
Okay, yeah. Now, there's a moment in the Taylor Swift concert. I just wanted to check where we were in terms of general knowledge of this, but there's a moment in the Taylor Swift concert that keeps coming up in my social media feed where of the 70,000 people in the stadium, a little 8-year-old child is plucked out of obscurity. All the 70,000 are focused on this one 8-year-old child. And from amongst this 70,000 people in the stadium, this child is chosen and given a hat. That little 8-year-old girl, as the whole of the 70,000 are focused on her, and it's a different girl every night in the whole tour, and from all the people, I am chosen to have this attention and the tears dripping down her face. And I just want to say that is tiny compared to the idea that the Father lavishes his love on you. That you, from all the people in the world, have been chosen to have love lavished on you by the Father. See what great love the Father has given. Not a hat, but great love. That we should be called God's children, and we are. I should have tears dripping down my face. I am precious to God. Now, non-Christian people, they won't get this, point B. They won't understand this extraordinary privilege that you have. Why won't they get it? They won't get the privilege that you have because they don't know God. Now, the teenagers, they know about the 22 hat. You adults don't know about it, but they do. And so they're like, oh, it's better than that. Why don't the non-Christians get it? Well, they don't know God. Their value system is wrong. The reason that the world, see it here, chapter 3, verse 1, does not know us, does not know the children of God, does not know my status as a child of God, is that it didn't know him, God. If they knew God, they would know what an awesome privilege it was to be called a child of God. But I look around and listen to the worldviews espoused by the people today, and they don't see the amazing privilege that this is. They do not know God. But we, beloved, point C, brothers and sisters, we are God's children now. We have this privilege, and what we will be in the future has not yet been revealed. Right now we are God's children, but the full extent of the implications, that's not clear yet. However, we know that when he appears, we will be like him, we will see him as he is. When Jesus comes, when he comes in his glory to judge the living and the dead, we'll be right there, seeing him, knowing him. Now, point 3, everyone who has this hope, everyone who has this privilege of being known, loved as a child of God, what I'm to be doing is intentionally working at remaining, concentrating at remaining, and part of that is going to be recognising sin in my life and purifying myself of sin, living rightly, avoiding sin. So purify yourself, point A. Verse 3, everyone who has this hope in him, everyone who has this hope in Jesus purifies himself just as he, Jesus, is pure. If you have this eye on heaven, this hope of heaven, this confidence about heaven, this sense I'm looking forward to the return of Jesus and my standing before him and I'm feeling confident about it, I'm working intentionally at remaining, and so what I'm going to be doing is purifying. I'm not going to be taking things for granted. There's to be a reverence for God, a respect for God, a respect for holiness. I'm not to be casual in his presence. I'm going to be pursuing purity in my life. Now, the Old Testament, what people used to do before Jesus, is they used to do ceremonial things to deal with their wrong, to work at getting rid of their impurity. This side of Jesus, I turn from sin. I turn away from corruption in my life. I turn away from wickedness. I turn away from lawlessness. I see it in verse 4. Everyone who commits sin practices lawlessness. And sin is lawlessness. For me to say, the disposition of my life is a sin life. The disposition of my life is to do whatever I want to do life. That's a lawless life. The disposition of my life is to commit autonomy. I just want to live the way that I want to live. And I'm to be turning away from that. I'm to be purifying myself from that. In fact, I run to Jesus for purification. Verse 5, you know that Jesus was revealed so that he might take away sins. And there is no sin in him. For each of us to be purified, I run to Jesus. He came, he was revealed, that in his death he might take away my sin, that I might be washed clean. But there's also now a choice in my life about which way I'm going to live, and this is point 4. It's a binary choice. I'll put it like this. a yes-no, a black-white, a binary, one or the other. I can be a remain person or I can be a sin person. See verse 6? Everyone who remains in him does not sin. Everyone who sins has not seen him or known him. The remain person, I don't want to be a sin person. But the sin person, I don't know Jesus. I'm not in relationship with Jesus. It's binary. You can't have a bet each way. You can't have a foot in each camp. It's one or the other. If you're a little bit like me, I think that we get seduced into thinking, and I think this is the devil's strategy. He tries to seduce me into thinking a little bit will be okay. Don't worry too much about this. It's just one moment. It's just one thing. And there's a whole lot of other people doing it, and everyone else at church. It's okay to worship the God of materialism just this little bit, just this Christmas. Or it's okay for me to lose my temper in this situation, or to lose self-control in this situation. What happened to annoy you with that person? That was quite a reasonable thing to be provoked about, and it's okay to lose your cool. And it's okay to have a foot in this camp and a foot in that camp. This is the word of God to us this morning. It's binary. Little children, verse 7, let no one deceive you. The one who does what is right is righteous, just as he, Jesus, is righteous. And the one, verse 8, who commits sin is of the devil. For the devil has sinned from the beginning. There's one or the other. Con Campbell talks about it in terms of family resemblance. It's not so much the individual action, but the pattern of your life, the disposition of your life. There's two different sorts of families with two different sorts of DNAs. There's God's family, the Remain family, and the devil's family, the sin family. Just think about your background for a minute. Think about your family background. Think about the family you grew up in for a minute. My wife, Catherine, she grew up in the Sutherland Shire. She was at the beach all the time. She's a beach girl. I grew up in the Hills District. We never went to the beach. Well, my family, we're a camping family. We were always off at 3 weeks of camping at Christmas time, but we basically never did overseas trips growing up. Your family, maybe you never went camping. My daughter, having grown up in a camping family, has married a man who does not like the beach. And she's getting used to it. No tents, no beach, no sand for her. Or are you a tidy family? Or are you a messy family? What's your family DNA? Are you a family that always leaves the bath mat on the floor? Are you a family that hangs the bath mat over the side of the bath? Or are you a family that doesn't have a bath mat? Or are you a family that always washes the dishes or always has them piled in the sink? Are you a family that settles disputes in a big row? Are you a family that never addresses conflict head on? Are you the righteous? Verse 7, let no one deceive you. The one who does what is right is righteous, just as he, Jesus, is righteous. And the one who commits sin is of the devil, for the devil's been sinning from the beginning. The child of God and the sinful person both bear their family resemblances. Do not be deceived on this. Let no one, little children, deceive you. I take it he says don't let yourself be deceived, because it's quite likely you might be deceived. Believers, you might be led astray by the children of the devil here. But he says, don't be deceived, no compromise, binary. I'm to be rigorous in weeding out, I'm to be rigorous in purifying myself. I'm to be rigorous in destroying sin in my life, because, verse 8, the Son of God was revealed for this purpose, to destroy the devil's works. I've tried some campaigns over the years of destruction. I decided I was going to destroy weeds in our garden and completely failed. For years, actually, I tried to have a tidy kitchen. And I even wrote a song for us to sing, me and the kids, when we are the tidy family. We are. They can't do it. I'm trying to do cognitive behavioural therapy on my children. They can't do it with a straight face. Do you know, our daughter so rebelled against her parents, her messy parents, that she rebelled by being tidy. I couldn't fix the problem, but God fixed the problem. God destroyed the devil's work. The reason the Son of God appeared was to destroy the devil's work. And if God is that serious about changing the corruption in my life, God is so serious about purifying me, then I need to be really serious, not just about ridding the garden of weeds or the tidiness of the kitchen, but pursuing not sin. Because everyone, verse 9, who has been born of God does not sin. If you are a child of God, if you are a born of God person, if you are in the family of God, then you are in a family that has as its DNA sin shunning. Why? Because his seed remains in him. He's not able to sin because he's been born of God. What's going on in that verse? I think there's a drawing of an organic relationship between the seed or sperm and birth. I think the seed here is the Holy Spirit. Different people have different views, but that's what I think. And the Spirit, I'm born of the Spirit. I'm born of God. The Spirit has anointed me, born of God. God's Spirit is remaining in you as a confirmation of God's fatherhood. Therefore, I am not able to continue in sin. Qualification, point C. What John is saying does not mean that believers will never sin entirely, that we will succeed completely in ridding sin from our life, not this side of heaven. I mean, if you actually remember back to chapter 1, chapter 1 verse 8, if we say we have no sin, we are deceiving ourselves and the truth is not in us. So it isn't that I'll be completely sinless, and in fact in any family a child will do the wrong thing. But the doing of the wrong thing does not disqualify the child from membership of the family. But really it's, what's the DNA of my family? What's my DNA? What's my disposition? What's my reference point? What's my default? Where do I want to end up? I want to end up child of God. I want to end up remaining. I want to end up purifying myself. No, I just want to acknowledge, and over the years, there have been movements within the wider Christian church where there have been significant errors in this area. You could Google the term later, sinless perfectionism, if you want, which was, if you like, a tribe of thinking within Christianity that I could actually get to on this life, this state of sinless perfectionism. And there's a conference ministry in the UK called Keswick, which promoted that for a number of years. And the effect of it as a movement was to hold believers to a standard that was impossible to meet, because I couldn't ever get to perfect sinlessness. And it had the effect, this sinless perfection movement, of causing a whole lot of Christians to not be honest about themselves, to not be honest about their sin, because they were pretending I've got to sinless perfectionism when in fact they hadn't. It's in the end encouraging hypocrisy. Whereas the teaching of the New Testament is I am to pursue the family DNA of sinlessness, of godly living. But it's equally the teaching of the New Testament that I will not achieve perfection until Jesus returns and I am finally made to be like him. So for a church or a movement to teach that I can achieve sinlessness in this life, well, has a number of pastoral implications. Firstly, it reduces sin. It causes people to reduce sin to just the big ticket items of, well, I haven't told an outright lie, or I haven't committed adultery, or I haven't done domestic violence, or I haven't done murder, or I haven't done abuse. But you know, sin is much, much more pervasive than just those big ticket items. sin it infects my deepest thoughts. It infects my deepest desires. It infects my deep wrong attitudes. Sin does not just merely consist of outward actions. I sin in thought, word, and deed. So, what I'm to do as a believer is to say, I want to purify myself from all unrighteousness. I want to act against the family pattern of sin. I want to squash that. I want to destroy that. I want to flee from it. I want to pursue righteousness. So, conclusion. This is how God's children and the devil's children become obvious. Verse 10. Whoever does not do what is right is not of God, especially the one who does not love his brother and sister. The DNA of the devil's children is that they don't live rightly. They don't live by God's standards. And especially that they do not love the brother and sister in Christ. Now, I don't think John is meaning brother and sister as in blood brother and sister here, sibling. Rather, when he says they do not love the brother and sister, I think he's meaning they do not love the other people in church, in this church. I think we're, at this point, harking back to Jesus' teaching of they'll know you're my disciple by your love. Now, in the devil's family, the children of the devil, there's no DNA of obedience and there's no DNA of love for the brother and sister. Whereas in God's family, there's a DNA of doing what is right and a DNA of love for each other horizontally. Now, Jeffrey was teaching here last Sunday morning. Kath and I were away last weekend up at EV Church. Last weekend we went away on holidays. Last week we were on holidays. And while we were on holidays, we went to church at EV Church in Erina. And it was interesting. Strangely, they had exactly the same sermon passage preached last Sunday morning at EV as was preached here by Jeffrey. And I'd been working with Jeffrey, preparing and coaching him ahead of his sermon here. And so I got to church there and, I've thought lots about this passage because I've been talking to Jeffrey about it, and let's see what this guy does in church with the same passage. And it was very interesting to hear how, having thought about it with Jeffrey, how somebody else tackled it. The guy at EV last week made more of a point that Jeffrey and I had not thought about as much. Just look back to chapter 2. There's a logic here. I'm not going to re-preach Jeffrey's talk, it's okay. Just look back to chapter 2, verse 19. They went out from us. They did not belong to us, for if they had belonged to us, they would have remained with us. However, they went out so it might be made clear that none of them belongs to us. Now, when we thought about the passage last week at Village, we had an emphasis, as Jeffrey taught us, was people who didn't remain, they didn't remain with God. And that was really sad that they didn't remain with God, and it was actually tragic for where they'll stand in eternity. They won't be confident when Jesus returns on the last day. And so it was tragic vertically, and how bad that was. But the emphasis that I got last week at EV was more of an emphasis on the horizontal aspect and the distress that someone might not just leave God, but they might leave the church family. And the pain and sadness when somebody turns away from God and also turns away from the church family, our church family. And what do we do with that horizontal pain? Well, now, take that thought and look at the last verse of our section this week. Verse 10, this is how God's children and the devil's children become obvious. Whoever does not do what is right is not of God, especially the one who does not love his brother and sister. The devil's child's DNA does not do what is right, does not love the other person, whereas God's children's DNA does what's right and especially loves the other brothers and sisters in the church family here. So Village Church, takeaway for us, we are to remain with God vertically to do what is right, but particularly, especially, pursue love for the other brothers and sisters here. This is to be our heart. This is to be our action. This is to be our deep commitment to each other. The worst pain of all is when somebody vertically leaves Jesus, doesn't remain, and also, in the same moment, horizontally leaves our church family. But as I was reflecting, it's not neutral emotionally when somebody stays with Jesus but leaves our church, for we are his family. We have been adopted. We've been given the new birth. We have his DNA. We love each other deeply. And there are so many different communities in the inner west. You could join the men's shed, or you could join the community choir, or the soccer dads, or the netball parents, or the PNC at school, but none of them have the DNA of love for the brother and sister that the church family has. Why do we care so much what happens at our church? Why do we care more about what happens at our church than what happens at my work? Because here is where we experience God is our Father and brother and sister love.